Hello, and welcome to Financial Aid and Managing College Costs. My name is Carrie Harlow, and I'm a member of the VSAC Career and Education Outreach Team. I'm joined tonight by Monda Kelley. She's also a member of the VSAC Career and Education Wellness Group. And between us, we have more than 40 years experience in helping families with filing financial aid forms. We're going to talk about the idea of paying for college and how families go about doing so. We want to acknowledge that people have concerns right now about how they're going to pay for college, and we do understand that. This presentation is intended to provide a general overview of the idea and the roles that families play, as well as options you may have in considering managing college costs. This presentation can't cover everything, though. We have a number of resources available on our vsac.org website, as well as videos that Federal Student Aid has available on YouTube, which families can use for assistance with filling out the FAFSA, as well as about the financial aid process. The key to success in this process is really communication about plans. Students and parents' involvement in the college search and selection process, along with school counselors, teachers, advisors, coming up with good college matches that meet expectations around distance, programs, housing, placement rates, the research that's involved in finding out about the true cost of a college, and other things like acceptance of AP and dual enrollment credits. While it's great when everyone's on the same page from the start, it may be likely that families and students have different unspoken expectations. And so it might be good to talk about things like whose responsibility it is to find schools to apply to, who will be completing the steps in the process, and whose primary responsibility is it to come up with the funds to pay for college. Who will have what roles in this process, and to what extent can we help each other? And how much can we afford? And who has veto power? Talking through these thoughts and expectations in advance can help families to focus on good college matches. Doing the research helps families make informed decisions that are not only well thought out, but financially sound. Just wanted to share a slide that shows advertised college prices. And this assumes a full-time first-year student with a full cost of attendance. Cost of attendance not only includes billable costs like tuition and fees and room and board, but also non-billable costs like books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses. And the all years figure also assumes no increases in costs. So the first three colleges, the most expensive college, University of Vermont, and the Vermont State College, are costs for students living on campus and for 4 years of study. Community College of Vermont and the Vermont Trade School are both shorter than 4 years worth of study. So their total cost is not times 4. It's times 2 for CCV and only once for that Vermont Trade School. Additionally, those costs are for students at CCV and the Vermont Trade School. Those costs are for a student who lives at home with their parents and commutes. So there may be the tuition and fees costs, but in addition, there may be some costs like for commuting, gas, parking possibly, things like that, as well as needing to bring lunch and have food available for during the day. If you were looking at tuition and fees and books alone, that would be closer to $9,600 per year at Community College of Vermont and $26,500 for the student commuting from home for the Vermont Trade School. But cost of attendance is not really necessarily what families are looking to pay. There's this thing called the net price. And the net price is the cost of attendance minus the gift aid a family will receive. That would be grants or scholarships. And that would equal what the family needs to come up with. And that's really a family's true cost for college. So I wanted to go back to those colleges that we reviewed just a couple of slides earlier and talk about the cost of attendance or sticker price versus the net price at these schools. And these are averages for all students. And so you can see at the most expensive college, while the cost of attendance, excuse me, is $70,000 a year, the net price is less than half of that. At University of Vermont and the Vermont State College, that is substantially less, as well as at CCV and the Vermont Trade School. And remember, the net price is the cost of the college minus free money like grants and scholarships. These net price figures don't include student or parent loans or work study. And there are a number of trade or career schools that are also eligible for federal and state student aid. 3 examples in Vermont would be O'Brien's Aveda Institute, New England Culinary Institute, and Advanced Welding Institute. And for these types of programs, the aid that we're going to talk about will also apply. So let's talk about where we can find this information about net price. The College Scorecard is a website that's managed by the U.S. Department of Education, and this website has a lot of information on it. You can find college either by searching for a college by a specific name or by using a search function where you can search by distance or location, degrees offered, and majors. There is a link to this page on the VSAC.org pay resources page, but I can also tell you that if you were to Google College Scorecard, this site does come up first and you'd be able to find it right away. There's in-depth information here about admissions, graduation rates, placement, median salaries of recent graduates, and the average net cost for students. And the net cost on the College Scorecard site can be broken down into family income bands. And then there are also links to college-specific net price calculators from this site, where students and families can put in more information about their personal circumstances, for instance, a student's grades or standardized test scores, and find out what students just like that student may have received in financial aid in a previous year. The thing I do want to note about the College Scorecard is for state-supported institutions, they are usually listing net costs for students who are in-state students. So if you're looking at a college that's state-supported, but it's outside of Vermont, you may want to go right to that college's net price calculator to see what prices for a Vermonter would be. And now we're going to switch over.
So this is where we would generally pause and see if there are any questions. And sometimes the question that may come up in this part is, do I have to put my personal information on the net price calculator site? And no, you don't. You don't have to. They will ask you questions about your income and your assets and things like that. And they may also ask for the student's name and email address. And don't feel that you need to put your personal information on that net price calculator unless you really want to. So as we think about our role as a family, think back to the first slide about the communication piece, and as you figure out what college is the best fit, there are things that you need to also consider, like the parents and the family's role in paying for college. It is the family's responsibility, the students and the parents' responsibility to pay for the cost of college. So that may come in different forms. It may come in loans. It may come in the student, like applying for scholarships, and those various ways to pay for college. So it is the parents' role and the family's role to assist in that process. So there are different types of financial aid available. And the first type that I'm going to talk about tonight is the grant. So grant application, there's Vermont has a grant application or a grant available to students and parents. And grants are things that student needs to apply for, and the grant is based solely on family income. There may be grant money through the colleges as well, but grant money is based on parent income and student income. Scholarships are, students apply for scholarships, and they can be based on merit, they can be based on grades, they can be based on community service activities. And that is not, those aren't generally based on income, but the student needs to make sure that they apply for them and that they meet the criteria in order to apply for these certain scholarships. Work study is federal. It could be federal work study. There is also colleges have work study options available for students on campus as well. However, if your student is interested in work study, then they should indicate that on the FAFSA. There's a question that says, are you interested in work study? I always tell students to say yes to work study. And then if they choose later not to work, then at least that money could be available to them. But if they say they're not interested in work study, then sometimes that money may not be available to them. And then lastly, there are loans, and loans are part of the college process. Loans are part of paying for college, and students and parents may need to take out loans. Loans are not based on income, but they do look at your credit in regard to loan availability. And it might help to meet some of that unmet need. So loans are a very important part of this process. So the applications that you need to submit, the first one is the FAFSA. FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Note the word free, make sure you use the free application. There are other applications out there that may cost money. If they're completing the FAFSA and they cost money, you may be on the wrong site, and that could be problematic when you go to log in later to update your FAFSA. So make sure you're on the fafsa.ed.gov site to complete that form. The Vermont Grant, VSAC.org also has the Vermont Grant application available, and that's also a free application that students should make sure that they apply for. Like we said, grant money is based on financial need and parent assets and parent income. Colleges may have other forms, so students need to be vigilant in checking the college websites and the financial aid pages to see what's required of them for financial aid forms. The CSS profile is through the College Board. CSS stands for College Search Service, and there is a fee associated with that. And the reason the College Search CSS profile is a form that some students may need to fill out for certain colleges is because this is what some of these private colleges use to distribute their endowment funding. So you need to make sure that your student checks the deadlines about the CSS profile to make sure that they meet those deadlines as well. Scholarship applications are other applications that students need to submit. And we've mentioned it, but we'll talk about it a little bit later on. But students could start applying now. So if you have a junior who's interested in college and they're here and they're checking this out, there are scholarships that students can start applying to now as juniors, but it's up to the student to make sure that this happens for them. They need to follow up with the scholarships with their schools and their high schools and with their colleges and other scholarship sites as well. Loan applications are forms that students need to submit and parents as well, and those can help fill the expected family contribution need, whatever need might be left over. And we're going to talk about that need later on as well. So in order to complete the FAFSA, you need to get your FSA ID. And the FSA ID is the student's electronic signature and the parent's electronic signature. So the student and the parent, one parent, need to complete the FSA ID and get an FSA ID in order to sign that FAFSA. So it takes about 40 minutes at the most to fill out your FSA ID and to get your username and your password set up. The important thing to make sure that you do when you do your FSA ID is you need to make sure that the student's social security number matches their social security number and that their birth date matches as well. And so along with the parent, you need to make sure that you have that information on the FAFSA FSA ID as well. Please make sure you use a non-school email address. I know that sometimes students set up their email addresses back in, when they start 7th or 8th grade, and Fuzzy Kitten 12 may not be an appropriate email address or is not actually an appropriate email address for students to use as they look toward their college careers. So make sure they use a non-school email address. And the reason for this other than having a professional email address, is once a student graduates, that email address, if they're using the high school email address, will go away. And these are forms that they need to renew every year that they're in college. So for all 4 years, for the next 4 years that they're in school, they need to be able to have access to these forms to renew their FAFSA, excuse me. And students can set up their FSA IDs now. That's something that you can do now. If you're a junior, you could probably do it now. There's no problem with that, but just make sure you put that information in a safe place so that when you go to log on your senior year, you have that information available, because it's kind of a pain sometimes if you forget that information. So as far as when to apply and how to apply for the FAFSA, the FAFSA is actually a required document in order to get financial aid. So unless you as a student and you as a parent are willing to pay the entire cost of the student's college, just open the checkbook and write a check, then make sure you complete the FAFSA, because this is what colleges use for financial aid. It's required. It's available now as of October 1st. It was first available. Make sure that you're doing the 2021-2022 version. So that's when the student starts their freshman year of college. That's the year that you need to complete on the FAFSA. And it's up to the students to make sure that they check college deadlines, to make sure that they're meeting those deadlines. You can apply to up to 10 colleges on the FAFSA. You can put 10 colleges on your FAFSA form. If you do more than that, then you have to kind of do a juggling thing a little bit and take some off and add some. So students need to figure out how that's best going to work for them if they apply for more than 10. I know with the Common App right now, it's easy to apply to more than 10 colleges. And they can always add some of these colleges on later if they would like to. There's a mobile app. Yes, I always forget that little part. The mobile app is it's pretty handy. I've used it before, and it's a great little app to use. It's actually parent friendly, so parents can use it as well. So I would recommend, if you wanted to give it a shot, try that FAFSA mobile app. So the Vermont grant is now available. It was available as of October 1st. You must be a Vermont resident in order to get money from VSAC for the Vermont grant. So like I said, available October 1st. Make sure you're doing the 2021-2022 version. If you log on and you're not really paying attention, it's easy to make that mistake, because both of the form from last year and the form for this year look very similar once you get on that site and you start filling it out. If you fill out the Vermont grant application for the wrong year, that's okay. It's great practice. It won't count, but it's just good practice. So it's up to you if you wanted to do that, but I would say don't waste your time doing the wrong year. It is required for grant aid. So if a student is to get Vermont state grant aid, then they need to make sure that they apply for that Vermont grant. Oftentimes parents and students will do the FAFSA and then they'll forget to do the Vermont grant, and there could be money available. So why leave that money on the table? It takes 15 minutes to apply for the Vermont grant. Just make sure you do it. Students can apply. After they apply, they need to check their status. Sometimes they'll get an email that says their status has changed. That means that VSAC either requires a worksheet document or that the grant has actually been awarded. So they need to just make sure they check it. If they get an email, that's not a bad thing. It means that they should just make sure they check their MyVSAC account. And the way that they would do that is they would hop on their MyVSAC account. Don't use a student email address, like I said, for the FAFSA. Don't do that for the Vermont grant either. And create your MyVSAC account, and then that would make it easier to check the status. The cool thing about Vermont grant money is you can take it out of state. It's totally portable, so you can take it to any state college or any out-of-state college that you would like to. Certain monies are available for students to take their money out of state. And this is a really cool thing, that students can take their Vermont grant money out of state. I don't know if there are many other states in the union that allow students to take money out of state like this, but I think that's really awesome. So so in order to figure out how much your financial need is, there's the expected family contribution. And the way you figure out what your expected family contribution is you complete the FAFSA form. So once you complete the FAFSA, you will get your expected family contribution will be part of that submitted FAFSA. So you'll be able to check that. But the way it's determined is it's based on your income. It's based on your assets. It's based on your family size. And it's based on the age of the older parent. It's also based on how many students or people are actually in college. So if your student is going to college, it's their first year, mom or dad might have decided to go back to college, then that would count as 2 people in college. So that's how that expected family contribution is figured out.
Great, thanks, Monda. And I know when we do these presentations and we have people in attendance, one of the questions that we often get is whose information goes on the financial aid forms? And the answer is it depends. But what I can tell you is that for the FAFSA, it is student and parent information. Usually with high school students, it's parent and student information. There are 10 questions on the FAFSA that determines whether a student requires parental information. And so a student could qualify as independent if they were answering yes to any of those determining questions on the FAFSA. And there is information on the federal student aid website as to who is independent and dependent. However, a student's parents not being able to pay or not being willing to pay is not a reason to make a student independent on the FAFSA. So you want to check those out if you're thinking that the student may be independent. But for students who are dependent, it is the parent of the student. And by parents, the way that they define that is if the parents are together, if the birth or legal parents are together, then it is both parents' information on the FAFSA, regardless of the parent's marital status. If the parents are not together, they're separated, they're divorced, then it is the parent who the student lived with the most in the last year whose information will be reported on the FAFSA. And if that parent has remarried, it is the parent and step parent's information who's on the FAFSA. So that's how they're defining family for the FAFSA. For the Vermont grant application, we may ask about the other parent if the student has a single parent. The CSS profile form, which is an additional financial aid form, will ask about all parents' information as part of the process. And so you need to be ready to possibly report different information on the different forms. Let's go back to talking about that EFC. I want to give an example of a family, a student who applied and got admitted to 3 colleges with 3 different costs. And you'll notice as we look at this, the first thing that comes in is that expected family contribution. So that comes in first. Then the Vermont grant comes in. In addition, there's a direct loan that the students can take out. There's college financial aid. Now, what we don't know about this college financial aid is how much of the financial aid is grants, how much of it is loans, how much of it is work. We just know that there's differing amounts, and that comes from the college. But in each of these cases, the student has some remaining need. So the family doesn't only have to come up with their expected family contribution, they also need to come up with that EFC and the unmet need. Now, let me just say that that remaining need could be something that students can fill with outside scholarship money. So this is a situation where the family may or may not need to also come up with the remaining need in addition to their expected family contribution. And so that's really a starting point, not necessarily what the family has to pay. When we talk about maximizing financial aid, there are some ways to do this. One is to do well in school. Doing well in school means you might qualify for additional merit aid or scholarship money, but it also means you might be able to apply to some of those schools that meet a student's full financial need, and you might not have that gap. Students could also challenge themselves. Taking challenging courses is another way that students could increase the level of colleges that they can be being admitted to. Students increasing school or community involvement could also qualify them for additional scholarship money. And communicating special circumstances to financial aid offices in VSAC also helps families to maximize financial aid. So for an example, on this year's FAFSA for the 2021-2022 school year, the income information that's being asked for is 2019 income. Well, a lot of families saw a change in their family circumstances in 2020. And the way that you'll get colleges to take that into consideration is to communicate those special circumstances to them. A lot of times you need to do that in writing. And also you could do a template that you use at each of the college's financial aid offices to where the student has applied. Students should research, but also apply for additional scholarship money, because that is a way that you can fill the gap for different families, but also for families that maybe have higher EFCs, scholarship money may actually help reduce the cost of the college that they're applying to and going to. Other ways to reduce costs might be to look further away, where a student being from Vermont is unique and might be something that would qualify them for some scholarships. Looking at dual enrollment or early college, where students can take college courses for free, that might be an option in transferring in college credit. Advanced placement, taking AP classes and doing well on the AP exams could also mean additional college credit. And in the case of dual enrollment, early college, and advanced placement, if you have enough credits and you can reduce the amount of time that you're in college, then you're actually saving real money. Think about that most expensive college. If you shave a semester or a year off that, that could really help a family to save significant amounts of money. NEBI, the New England Board of Higher Education, has a program where if we don't offer a major in Vermont at our state institutions, a student could take that major at an out-of-state, state-supported school in New England at a reduced cost. And so NEBI has a guide each year where you can look and see what Vermont residents would be eligible for. But one of the examples we use is that Vermont is landlocked. We don't have a marine biology major because we don't have an ocean. So you can look at schools like UMass, UNH, or UMaine, where they might have a marine biology program, and the student could go there from Vermont at a reduced rate. Students could also start at a school that costs less and then transfer. Many members of our staff are fond of saying it doesn't matter where you begin. What people ask for is where you got your degree from. You could consider attending local and commuting. So if you have a college nearby and you live at home, room and board costs range anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a year. That is another way to save and reduce your costs in this process. And also considering service. A program like AmeriCorps has a scholarship component to it that people earn when they do the AmeriCorps program, or students who decide to serve in the Vermont Air or Army National Guard could also get free tuition at the Vermont State Colleges or UVM, as well as a tuition benefit at private colleges in Vermont. And for every 2 years of service, they get a year of free tuition benefit. When we talk about ways to pay, we really, in painting the broadest stroke, talk about past income, present income, and future income. So past income are things like savings or college savings plans. Present income would be things like receiving a tax credit that you can use the following semester, or payment plans where you pay by the month, or scholarships. Future income is basically borrowing. So things like Parent Plus loans, additional student loans, private loans, or other borrowing options are all ways that families can help pay for college. Many families will use a combination, maybe some savings and some tax credits and scholarships, as well as some borrowing to pay for college. If you're unable to access one of these three things, then you have to lean more heavily on the others. So for instance, if you have no savings, you would have to lean more heavily on present and future income. Or if you don't have a way that you can borrow, you might have to lean more heavily on savings or present income. So let's talk a little bit about savings. You know, the more you save, the less you have to borrow. And remember, you get paid to save, but you have to pay to borrow. So this is a way, if you can have some savings to use toward college costs, it's beneficial. A lot of times people believe that savings would make you eligible for less financial aid, and that is really a myth. Parents' savings are really heavily protected in the financial aid process, being that families have to have money for a rainy day, they have to save for retirement. So it's really important to think about ways that you can save. And what can you add to savings before you need to borrow for college? That's another thought that you could have. And how much can students add to their savings through gifts or through summer employment? Once you've filed your financial aid form, students could be earning money and socking that aside in order to pay for college the following fall. And by the time they reapply for financial aid, they may have used that money to help pay toward their college costs. Another way to pay would be federal loans for dependent students. Many colleges will have these loans on their financial aid awards to students. So this often gets awarded to students automatically as part of the financial aid process. And in order to be eligible for those federal loans, students do have to file the FAFSA. And so there are caps. The freshman year, the limit is $5,500. Sophomore year, $6,500, and junior and senior year, $7,500. These federal loans for students require no cosigner, and they are able to be deferred until the student is 6 months out of school. So let's talk a little bit about the student loan options. We talk about the federal loans, and we recommend that students accept these loans first. The interest rate is currently 2.75%. Every year on July 1st, the US Department of Education sets a new interest rate. So unfortunately, that won't be the interest rate for students who are current high school seniors. They'll have their own interest rate. That is also a fixed rate loan. But there are other student borrowing options. So you accept the federal loan first and then compare other loans. VSAC is a lender of the Vermont Advantage student loan, and we have fixed interest rates based on when the student begins repayment. And there are other non-federal lenders, nonprofit organizations, banks, credit unions, and other private lenders. And you want to compare those loans because the interest rate could be variable, it could be fixed, and you want to find that out as you're comparing and thinking about college costs, because what it costs to borrow is a real cost for paying for college. Parents also have the ability to borrow student loans for education for their students. There is a federal loan called the PLUS loan, that's short for Parent Loans for Undergraduate Students. The interest rate this year is 5.3%, and we recommend that families compare because they may be able to find better interest rates. VSAC has a non-federal loan, the VSAC Advantage Parent Loan, which has a fixed interest rate, and the interest rate is dependent on when you begin repayment. Other non-federal lenders also have their own loans. They're often called private loans, and it varies. The interest rate varies by lender, whether they're variable or fixed, and you definitely want to compare those loans. In our house, I have a college student, and we have seen a bunch of mailers come to our home advertising different interest rates, and some of those have teaser rates. You can get a loan as low as 1.7%. But then when you apply, you find out that 1.7% doesn't necessarily apply to you. And just know that when you're comparing loans, if that happens to you, you do have every right to say, no, I don't accept this loan. I'm going to keep looking. So let's talk for a minute about calculators. There's a number of calculators out there that can help students and families with determining things like how much should we borrow for education. Mapping Your Future has a great student loan debt to salary wizard, and you can put in information about a student's planned borrowing and how much they're going to borrow over the course of 4 years, and then figure out, well, how much do I need to earn in order to be able to pay this loan off? Additionally, studentloanhero.com has some calculators on there. They have a ton of calculators, by the way, but some that we recommend are the student loan comparison calculator. You can actually see the types of money that you could save using that. And also there's a debt to income calculator. It's important to kind of keep that in mind. College Board has some financial aid tools and calculators as well. They have an EFC calculator. So if you are a junior or you are the parent of a junior and you want to know more about your EFC, you can use that calculator to get an early feel for what that might be. There's also a parent debt calculator on the College Board website where you can put in information about the parent's income, housing costs, other debt that they may be carrying, and then figure out, well, how much could I borrow this year, or how much could I borrow over 4 years as a parent, and still have it be something that's not impinging too much on your living.
So a question that we may get at this time might be a question just about loans and where to go for loans, and so we need to, it's up to you. You need to be an informed consumer. You need to make sure that you're having this conversation that with your student, to make sure that you're making the right choices that are the best choices for you. And one question that we often get is, should I refinance my home in order to pay for our students' education? And that's a conversation that you'd have to kind of figure out if that's the right step for you. But personally, I personally probably wouldn't do that, because the student needs to be accountable too. And why take a loan out? Why refinance your home for something that you may get lower interest rates on an educational loan than you may if you refinance your home? So I'm not a financial planner. I would say if you needed to talk to your financial planner about things like that, then that would definitely be a good step to take. Okay, so as we look at, if we do have juniors here, congratulations. Thank you for being part of this and looking toward your next steps in your educational future. So there are things that you can be doing as a junior. We do have this junior timeline available for you on our FAFSA, on our VSAC site, on our VSAC page, website, And so things that you should be doing as a junior is start researching those colleges, start having those conversations with your parents, start figuring out what colleges meet your best needs academically, socially, and financially. Try to figure out what the best fit might be for you, and just start really exploring those schools. Check out College Scorecard to find out financially what might be the best fit for you. Put in those net price calculator figures and try to figure out like what would be the best financial decision for you to make in regard to colleges. It's amazing how many majors are available in state and out of state, and how you can actually find a college that is the best fit for you. Start having those conversations, like I said, with your parents. Make sure you start researching those scholarships. Like I said, scholarships are available now to you as juniors. Start taking advantage of that. Any money that you can get now is good money that you don't have to use to pay for college later. So it's just a great stepping stone. Okay, and as you look to your senior year, you seniors, hopefully you're doing this already. You're researching your colleges to find out, which ones that you want to apply to. Make sure you check out those college websites to meet the deadlines. Nothing is worse than leaving money on a table or not getting into a college because you haven't met their college deadline. So make sure you figure out when those deadlines are. Go online now and create your FSA ID. You can start filling out your FAFSA now. Create your My VSAC account. Now make sure you do that. Get your information together, because chances are when you're completing your FAFSA, you're going to need your tax information. You're going to need your W-2s, and you're going to need information about your home value and how much your home is worth, and if you own a business, what your business is worth, and things like that. So make sure you have all that stuff available. It'll make that process a lot easier. Make sure you do file for the FAFSA and the Vermont grant applications. Those are two, like we said earlier, required deadlines. So VSAC also has the Unified Scholarship application where we handle many scholarships that through our VSAC account. So the scholarships are available now. So you can log on to your VSAC page and check out and get the scholarship application booklet. It's one application, one scholarship application for the scholarships. There's an essay required. Make sure you follow up with the essay. Make sure you get your letters of recommendation. It's due in February, the 11th, right, Carrie? Is that right?
That's correct. February 11th, 2021 is the deadline.
2021. It's only taken me 4 times to get that date correct, so I finally did. And make sure you apply for any other scholarships that may be available to you. Make sure that you check out the criteria and apply for those scholarships. So good scholarship money is good money to have. Make sure that you just do that and see if they're renewable. Okay. We have a VSAC resources page on the VSAC site, which is very helpful. And so I would recommend going on to vsac.org/pay-resources. And we have all kinds of information on that page about FAFSA Fridays, about financial aid forms. We have information about comparing loans. We have scholarship information. Anything that you need that's college related and paying for college related is available on that page. We also have the Paying for College guide at vsac.org/page-resources, which is a great source of information for you to learn about college loans and to learn more about how to pay for college and what steps you need to take, kind of like a more condensed version, paper version of what we have for you today, what we presented for you today. However, this is available online. We also have it, the education loan guide, which is available also on the VSAC resources page. You can print it or you can ask for a copy of it to be emailed to you if you go to the publications at vsac.org site. Carrie, I'm going to let you talk about this because if that's okay.
Sure, that's fine. Definitely. There are a lot of places where you can get help with financial aid forms, and we just wanted to let you know some of those. One is by phone. You can call the FAFSA folks at 800-4-FED-AID, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. But you can also get help during the day, during the week, 8 to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, by calling VSAC at 833-802-8722, which, by the way, it's 802 VSAC. You can get help over the phone. Online, FAFSA has a chat that you can use while you're filling out the application. And also, VSAC is offering financial aid help. If you go to vsac.org/FAFSA, you can schedule an appointment for one-on-one help with a VSAC staff member via Zoom to help you with financial aid forms. We've also offered some VSAC Shows You How events. We really have been using these quite a bit this year with a lack of ability to do in-person events. And so we did a Facebook Live event on Thursday, October 15th. That was available over Facebook Live, over Facebook and Zoom at 6 p.m. That is now recorded and on our financial aid videos page. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. And also, we're going to have another workshop on My VSAC, the Vermont Grant and VSAC Scholarships applications that will take place on Wednesday, November 18th at 6 p.m. And what I want you to know is you can register for that in advance. But if you aren't able to, or you're viewing this at a later time, we will also have that video available. The recordings are available after the events on YouTube. We have the My VSAC Story channel, but we also have on the VSAC website, and I'm gonna actually shift my screen share for just a minute, and I'll show you that on our website. It is vsac.org/financial aid videos. And when you look at this, we're going to have the financial aid and managing college cost presentation, how to fill out your FAFSA, and then more paying for college videos. The video for how to fill out My VSAC and Vermont Grant and VSAC Scholarships application will also be available on that same website when we have it. So what we hope you take away from this presentation is, one, this is a process where communication is really, really important. But in addition to that, VSAC is one of the places where Vermonters can get a great deal of help with navigating this process. And we thank you for your attention, and we look forward to working with you virtually or maybe someday in person. Thanks very much.
Take care.